Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second ever WPG Academy session. I am super excited to be here today with Cameron Leach. My name is Megan Campbell, first of all. I'm the acting director of operations for the WPG Academy, hosting these first couple of sessions while our regular host and artistic director, Tim Palmer, is away on tour with the WPG group on a cruise. Today, pretty sure they're performing in Estonia. They're there right now. So Tim hopefully will be hopping on in an hour or so to come say hello. I think he will be able to make it today. So that'll be super
Cool.
exciting. We'll all get to meet him. But today we're here with Cameron Leach. Cameron is a amazing solo percussionist and orchestral percussionist, good at everything. And also a super, super cool guy. Would you like to tell them about
Sure.
yourself a little bit?
Sure. Well, first off, let me address the elephant in the room, which is all the whiskey. So sorry about that. I'm a part-time on the side now whiskey reviewer on YouTube. So that's why this looks like this is my live streaming setup for my whiskey stuff. But I once upon a time went to Eastman, did my master's there, did a music ed degree at Capital University, which is a small school in Ohio, and had this dream of being a solo percussionist. Kind of went down that path for a few years. I'm kind of on a hiatus from that now. Once COVID hit, I stopped touring, doing concertos and recitals. Ended up getting an orchestral job, so I'm principal percussionist of the Columbus Symphony now. Something that I swore I would never do. Swore I'd never take an audition. One and done. I'll never do another one. But I enjoy that quite a bit, and now I'm kind of reshifting things, and I'll be back on the road doing solo stuff probably within the next year to year and a half. As I've kind of found some balance now, real life. You got to try to buy a house, all the things that like start popping up in your life that become more priorities over other things. So it's been an interesting ride, but very excited for this. And I was on the WPG tour that's actually happening right now, the one in the Baltics. I did that back in 2017 between my 2 years at Eastman in that summer between, and it was like transformative for me. And so happy to be here. And I know Megan from last time we did this, and then Tim Palmer I met obviously through the tour, and we've stayed in touch. So this is very cool, and I'm excited for everybody today that's going to be playing. I'll take notes and mark up their scores and send them some scans at the end.
Awesome. Super exciting. I also would like to show really quick before we get started with the performances. We have a little bit of extra time today. I would love to show a video of Cameron's playing. So I will be showing a video of his performance of Burret Variations,
Old
which I
school.
think I
Old
can pull
school.
this up.
What was that? I'm probably 2016.
Not your kid? No.
Oh, sorry about the ad. Um, I
Got to
was
pay the
trying to see
bills,
when
you
it
know.
was. Yeah, I guess so.
I'm not
No!
making I'm
Okay.
not making that ad revenue actually. So it's
Your problem.
Yes, this was from 6 years
6 years
ago. Is
ago.
that 2018?
Wow. Seems like
Yeah.
a lifetime ago.
Okay, we'll just play a little bit of this video.
That's cool. Yeah, at the time I didn't know that you shouldn't have long intros to performance videos. Sorry. We're going to wait for 10 seconds.
Okay.
Cool.
I couldn't find a
No,
good
there's
place to
there's
stop that one.
nowhere to stop in that piece except for like 5 minutes in, so it's all good.
Yeah, awesome. So there's a little snippet of Cameron's playing. It's super great. I cannot wait to hear your feedback as well for our performers. Do you have anything you'd like to say about that piece or that performance, or how you would approach being a solo percussionist?
Well, we can talk solo stuff. I think we'll probably talk about it along the way and at the end. But yeah, that what's funny is when you see these videos on YouTube, these performance videos, and I'm sure we all have this. People had to submit videos for this, and some are more produced than others, right? It's like this immortalizes you online, and it always cracks me up because I look back at that video and I know the circumstances were like me trying to find time in a concert hall that was not the school I was going to at the time, just trying to sneak in, squeeze time, set up all these things, and like you feel all this pressure in the moment, and you go back and watch those videos, and you're like, I remember all those missed notes because of like all the circumstances, and I relearned the piece in a week. So it's just funny when you look back like years later. When I first put that out, it felt so consequential, and now I just laugh at it, and I'm like, wrong, like couple wrong notes. I wish I could do that again. Who cares? So
Totally, yeah. Um, that's a very nice way to look back on things. And I already have videos I recorded a year ago that I feel the same exact way about.
yeah,
Just yeah. So Jack, are you ready to go? Awesome. So this is um, Jack Littlewood from the UK. Jack,
Hello.
why don't
what's up, Jack?
go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us where you go to school, what you'll be performing, where you live.
Yeah,
That kind of thing.
I'm Jack. I'm a first year student at Newcastle University, doing principal study percussion, and the piece I'm going to be playing in this video is "As the Snow Falls" by Robert Otomo from the Four Fantasies for Marimba Volume 2, I think it is.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah,
Cool. And
enjoy.
and tell me about like how long you've been working on this piece, and when did you record it? Was it pretty recently?
So I've been working on it since September. I did this like 2 months ago, 2 or 3 months ago. I've got my recital next week, which I'm going to be playing it in. So that's what it's been
Cool.
prepared for, really.
So we're not gonna, I'll give you a lot more comments probably on the page. I'll send you this scan, later. But I don't want to go too hard if your recital's next week. You know what I mean? We don't need to throw a wrench in things. But no, this will be great. So it sounds like you're pretty familiar with the piece and you've been
Yeah,
playing it for a while. So cool,
yeah.
great. Well, let's do it. And I don't know a lot of Robert's music except for the Over the Rainbow arrangement. So this is going to be new to me. All right. Cool. So tell me about I've got a bunch of notes, which is great. And I think we're going to be able to talk about some really big picture stuff. We can talk about a few specific moments, but I think it's actually going to be more beneficial, especially for you with your recital coming up soon. Maybe just go a little more big picture on some of this stuff, if that sounds okay with you.
Yeah.
I think the connection's a little wacky right now. You can still hear me?
Yeah. That's all good.
Okay, cool. Um, so tell me real quick about that performance. Like, what do you think was maybe the strongest thing that you did, and maybe the weakest thing that you did?
Um, well, I think there was a couple of like scrappy moments, like uh, in the middle there was a few wrong notes, and I think that then
Whatever
put,
though.
it put me off a little bit though after that, and then I kind of lost the feel a little bit in the middle, but I
Hmm.
think I managed to get it together, and I think I've got the kind of I would say I've kind of got the emotional grasp of the feel right
Mm,
in the way that it's meant to be pretty like serene and like expressive and
yeah.
quite kind of moving.
So I think you're right. I think the biggest comment that I would have, like, here's what I think maybe you should consider too is you're in a what sounds to be a pretty resonant room, which is great, and you can and that playing over the internet's a little tougher. But I watched this recording earlier, and when I just listen in my own headphones, you can hear the resonance of the room. But you still are limited by the resonance of any given space that you're in, right? And so for me, even when you're in a resonant room, typically you play slower because you have more, you're filling up the sound more. There's more of this echo, and you can get away with it. And
Yeah,
and it's like I don't know if you're a fan of stand-up comedy, but if you ever see a stand-up comic in a small club, they can talk pretty fast because the audience is right in front of them. But if
yeah,
they're in a big theater, they have to wait for the applause to die down before they start talking again. It's the same concept. And so I think you're a little limited by the resonance of the room, and I think you need to play the entire piece 15% faster.
okay,
Like,
yeah,
so there are moments, like right off the top in the beginning, you have this first iteration of kind of this thematic material that's going to happen throughout the whole piece, which is great. And you play it very expressively, pretty slow, like, and that's great. The first iteration can be that. But there's so much repetition in here and so many of these same figures that once a melodic line really appears on the top line in particular, which starts in like measure three, you
yeah,
know, I think those things we can have ja do 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 dee do in the very beginning, and then you have ja do 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 dee da do 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 do. You know, there's more motion between all of these individual notes because right now a lot of the piece sounds very vertical. It's
mm,
like I can hear every single note that goes by, and I would rather hear in many cases like just a wash of notes that fly by, and then I hear the melody on top.
yeah,
And so that's kind of like just the biggest overall comment, and I think it comes down to number one, playing this like a pianist in some ways, but also like a we don't always have to relate it to piano. Like the marimba is a resonant instrument that has a lot of like slurring capabilities. And so to me, it's like, yeah, I think we often get caught in this trap of trying to play so expressively and so beautifully that it just becomes very slow because we
yeah,
love the sound of
yeah,
the instrument, you know, and it feels good. But it's also like just let some of those things go, just throw the notes away. And if you miss a note and you speed up in a run, who cares? You know, I'd rather hear like that shape, which is most important. Does that make sense?
yeah, absolutely, yeah,
I wish I had a marimba in front of me that I could demo for you. It's in my basement, but it's hard. I don't have like a big setup down there that I can like, do all this. Um, and so I'm just gonna kind of comb through some of my comments, and I've got the music right here. I don't know if you've got it in front of you as
yeah. I've got
well.
it. Just
Great. Um, so yeah, I said my overall comment said consider resonance as a limiting factor. You know,
yeah,
it is we have a few limiting factors in certain performances, and then the other one is like very musical, but maybe too careful. Like beautiful
okay,
doesn't always mean slow. Beautiful can also mean, going for
yeah, yeah,
some of these faster things. Now, the way that you handled, look at line two, the very last measure, there's this writ in line two where kind of things evaporate.
mm,
That was beautiful. Like the way you did that, you come into this little like higher melody, dolcissimo section, and this is where I said when you state something, like measure nine, beginning of line three, you state this little thing up top. It's very crystalline. It feels like the winter. It's as the snow falls, And then you do that again, and the next measure, play the next one faster. When you have these repetitive figures, just start to differentiate in any way. It could be dynamics, could be rhythm. I think that's a way to add some interest. Now, real quick, talk to me about your concept of like. I like to talk about this in somewhat like analytical terms. Talk to me about your concept of phrasing, and do you have any like do you just kind of do what feels right, or do you have some kind of like things that you're trying to like precepts in your head that you're trying to assign to certain things? Like how do you think about this?
Well, especially with this piece, first, like coming into it when I first started learning it, I could
Hmm.
see the phrases were kind of in half bars. Like you've got the do 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 do, then new phrase do 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 do. But now I've been playing this for a few months now, and it's become kind of subconscious to the point now where, like in the last session we had with Caleb Pickering, he pointed out that all my phrasing was the same pretty much
Hmm.
all the way through the piece, and I hadn't really thought about that because I just kind of gotten used to the phrasing of it. But it is something that I probably should think about more to make it a bit more interesting, because I've got the same kind of phrasing in terms of slowing down a bit at the end of every phrase and
Hmm.
making it a kind of wave. But um, I suppose there are other ways of differentiating it. But
Yeah, let me give you a couple ideas. And this is a very analytical way to think of it. And I don't always love this, but I think sometimes there's a time and a place to say you should phrase this like snowfall, and then there's a time and place to say you should play slower. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
both of those things are good. It's like speaking Spanglish a little bit, like going between these different languages and then mixing and matching for whatever resonates the most with the student, right? So to me, I think of phrasing in a few ways. Are you going to play faster, increasingly slower, increasingly louder, increasingly softer? Do you know what I mean? And then you might pick one direction. You might just say, okay, I'm going to play the same dynamic. That's kind of weird, but maybe I play the same dynamic and I'm just going to speed up. Well, usually speeding up to me, you could be throwing a phrase away and playing softer and faster, go away, or you can like get really loud. And so to me, it's like pick a dynamic direction and a tempo direction and just start mixing and matching those things and see what works. And sometimes you would be surprised to find that within 6 notes, because a lot of these are 6 note phrases, these half
mm,
bars, sometimes within 6 notes, you are slowing down and speeding up 3 different times, right?
yeah,
And then the directions become unclear. And
right,
and the listener kind of gets like this. And I'm so guilty of this. My teachers back in the day, well, they still tell me because I play with them in the orchestra. Uh, they still tell me like, "Hey, man, you overphrase things." So I'm so guilty of this.
yeah,
I think pick more solid directions, and that's why I really liked when you played the end of that measure 8 at the end of the second line. It slowed down and it got softer, and it was all very intentional. It felt like.
okay, yeah,
All right. So, anyways, let's move on a little bit. Here we go. Look at the top of page. I guess it's the third page of it, but it says page 4, measure
yeah,
36. Up here, you're kind of in like this higher register, with those 16th notes that are going on underneath the melody. And so to me, like the higher the register goes, probably the faster you need to play this. And what I said here was, uh, musical motion needs to happen for its own sake, not as an accuracy crutch. I felt like you were kind of like really careful about the notes, and
mm,
then it slowed even more down. Whereas like because we're in that higher register and there's less resonance, we need to create more of a wave effect of the sound. Um, so just make sure like you know we're not making too many phrasing decisions based on accuracy or based on like physical discomfort in the moment. Um, and then I also just want to talk kind of overall about your countenance when you play. There was a lot of, forgive me, I got this microphone right in front of me, but like when you're playing, there's a lot of what I call like plotting, like PLODDING, where it's down, down, like kind of like this.
yeah,
Each note has its own event. Whereas if I saw more just continuous motion in your hands, I think it wouldn't just be a physical countenance thing, it would also translate into music. If I decide that I'm going to play 6 notes and I'm going to start here with my mallets and I'm going to end here, that is going to produce the phrase that you want. So it's like, music through physical motion, not just velocity of your mallet and angle and stuff. And then I think you're also going to have just a more convincing presence behind the instrument. It felt a little careful, and that's kind of what I said
Yeah.
too, not just musically but also physically. So just one way to get better at this again is pick your musical direction, but then also not only make that happen sonically, but make it happen visually as well. And I think that's what you see great soloists doing. I don't know what marimbas like. If you had to pick favorite marimbist, which is kind of a funny category, but who would you put in there?
Well, probably Pius Chang,
Yeah.
probably Evelyn Glennie, I suppose.
Uh-huh. Let me give you one. Let me give you one. Do you know Kai Strobel?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah. So Kai, I mean, when you watch Kai play, you can turn the volume off and you know what you're gonna hear. Do you
right,
know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
mean, it's everything is right there for you. It's served up on a platter. That's why he's so amazing. I mean, he's just a ridiculous player. That's kind of what I'm saying is like, if we turn the volume off, I wouldn't exactly know what I'm hearing from your performance, you know?
yeah,
Now, I'm not also I've been like hypercritical. You play this great. You have a great sense of again like crystalline snowfall, these ideas. I just think like the next level is generally speaking, play it a little bit faster and let phrases go more. Not
okay,
every note is so important. Um, let's see. Look at the last page as well. There's this cool thing before what is essentially the coda. I would say is probably where that double bar is, like in the middle of the page. It's kind of where the coda starts. Right before that, again, another kind of evaporating phrase that goes down. At the end of that, when you play that little ripple,
yeah,
you played it and then you just kind of stopped and then reset to go to the next thing.
yeah,
You can do that, but the other thing you might consider doing is play that ripple and let yourself float to your next location, right?
yeah,
So for the audience, one thing that's interesting about like let's talk specifically physical, visual, is that you can again create a sense of expectation. So for the audience, if you just play that ripple and you stop and you stand like this and you go, let's say it's 7 seconds, nobody knows when you're going to move. And it can be a powerful tool. It can also create anxiety because imagine. I know we're going deep on this. Sorry. Imagine you're listening to Steve Reich. Have you heard Steve Reich music? Yeah. You have no idea when things are going to change, right? And so it can
mm,
create a peaceful sensation, but it can also make you really anxious when you're listening to it because you're like, I don't know when this is going to change. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean.
And so if in this moment you just totally flatten out and you're hanging out at the keyboard, whereas if you let's say you float to the next moment, there's a sense of expectation. Oh, I see he's halfway there. I see he's three-quarters of the way there. Okay, now we're playing again. Like
Yeah,
that creates a little bit of a comfort for the audience. And I think for me, this is not a piece where we need to defy
exactly.
expectations. We don't need to create anxiety. We want to create comfort in this piece. But has some of this been helpful?
Yeah,
Some of the,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's put a new perspective on some things I can do because well, I've got a week to work on it.
yeah. And I think like just in that week, consider the big picture things. Just consider like the overall shapes of certain phrases and just let things go a little bit more. Are you like are you kind of a type A person?
What does that mean?
Just like I don't want to say I'm like kind of OCD about certain things. I can be
Yeah,
very particular. Sometimes in
yeah,
your playing it, I feel like maybe you're a very particular person about things.
yeah,
And it's good to let that go sometimes, you
mm,
know?
yeah,
And
yeah.
and so it's interesting what you can kind of pick up from people's performances, I think.
Mm.
Um, but anyways, this is great, man. This is really great. Do you have any questions for me?
Um, I think you've pretty much answered them all, to be fair. Yeah, that's been really good. I mean, if I can look through, I'll have a look through the full notes later,
Yeah.
and and yeah, that'll be really good. Thank you.
And remind me, you said you're a first year, so
Yeah,
So are you what are you 19?
18.
18. I mean, geez. I did not play this way at your age. Seriously, like I didn't really honestly take it too seriously till I was about 21. To be honest, I was just like kind of messing around through school. And I just wanted to play snare drum. So it's pretty remarkable that you can phrase this way already. So the comments I was giving you are comments that I think I'm typically giving to people that are like in their junior or third or fourth years in school as they're looking to grad school. So
Mm.
to be giving these to you, I think is really impressive, and it's a testament just to like how you have like natural musicianship, which is so good to see. Um, yeah, so you should feel really proud about all that, and it's great.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Awesome job, Jack. Really great sounds for sure. Yes, it was nice to hear you play again.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Okay, next up we have Noah Avalar from a
what's up, Noah?
couple different places. You can tell us about yourself.
I was originally born in Corpus Christi, and then I went to Denton for my undergrad at UNT. Now I'm in my first year. I just finished my first year of my master's at Texas A&M University of Commerce.
Nice, nice,
Yeah.
dude. It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you again. Yeah.
I've just kind of kept up a little on social. I generally stay off social media unless it's whiskey stuff now for the most part. So I don't totally see what everybody's doing, but I know you're doing good stuff. And so you said you're with Zader then down there?
Yes, I'm with Zeta right now.
Beautiful. All right. Awesome, man. Well, okay. So tell me about what you're gonna play.
I'm going to be playing Rooted by Brian Bloom. I recently just played this on a recital,
Okay.
my first master's recital this past April. And I've been working on it since probably late October, like late October. It's kind of been on and off until it was on the recital. And the ultimate goal with this is just to have it in my hands so that it can be like a clinic recital piece, kind of just like bring it out the woodwork whenever I can.
Mm-hmm. It looks hard. Like I'm just looking at I didn't have a chance to listen to this one earlier. I saw snare drum and I was like, all right, you know, I don't think we'll just do this on the fly. It'll be more fun that way. Because if I started listening to this earlier, I was going to try to learn too much of it, and I didn't want to do that. So I see there's glockenspiel in here. What the heck's going on with that?
Oh, yeah.
Just to interject, for those of y'all who are watching, this piece was actually a WPG commission from 2021. Was
Oh,
commissioned by Tim from Brian Bloom to be performed by Elliot Gaston Ross, who's one of our
oh,
later coaches. He was the premier, and then I actually got to play it on the most recent tour. So it's kind of a WPG tradition to have this piece. We are so excited for Noah to be playing it. It has an awesome
whoa.
recording coming up.
Well, now you just added pressure. Now I got to say something decent. All
Yep.
right. Elliot's a killer player. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to this. I haven't heard it, so this is going to be cool.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. All right. Oh, nice video. That rub at the end with the 9-lets is funny. I was like, wait, are you playing out of time? No. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about it. Megan, can you put us side by side? Thank you. Sweet. Okay. I didn't really write down specific stuff because obviously you play all these notes, we play it really well. You got good hands. So we're gonna have to probably talk on a little bit more of like a big picture level with this, I think. And I think this will be a good discussion, but it's gonna really be back and forth. So bear with me as we kind of go through this because it might get tedious. And so if I sound like an idiot, just tell me or like ask me a question
All right.
about what I'm trying to say because let's kind of start from the top. Like first you play the shit out of it. Sorry, pardon my French. You play very, very well. I think you know it. The video production's great. So I have and it's a long piece. What is that? Like probably 9 minutes?
Yeah, I think it's about 8.5 minutes. It's like
Okay.
just under the Black Swamp time. Like I submitted this
Ah,
a few weeks ago. Yeah.
okay. So there's an issue with some of these electronic pieces that I have, and you know I play a lot with electronics, but I'm also I'm cognizant of like the drawbacks that this medium has, which is sometimes things just are not. It's the same issue as concertos. Sometimes the solo part doesn't actually drive the piece; it's just an accompaniment to like the audio track. And so then in those moments, sometimes there are things you can do about that as a performer and make it more interesting. And some of it's not even just musical. Some of it's like adding lighting and stuff, frankly. But then some pieces can't be helped, and you really like musically you can do nothing to help them based on how they're written, and you have to then resort to other things. I think like I'm not saying anything about Brian and the way he wrote this piece. I think there's a lot you can do musically actually to help this feel like the solo part is a little bit more of a driving factor as opposed to, like feeling as if it's an accompaniment. So like, let's just take a look. You have the music in front of you.
Yes. Yes.
So like this stuff at A, right? There's these 5-lets. There are these like up and down phrases. And what's interesting is like Brian is trying to be very specific about the notation where he goes 5s to 4s to 3s, and he himself is giving you the written out way of phrasing something. Whereas I actually think, so let me back up. If that's the case, if he is giving us basically a written metric retardando, then the moments that he doesn't give you that, it feels like I should play this in time, right? Like it's either time or he's written out the writ. I think you should play with the gray area between that now. And I do this on a lot of electronic pieces that are not strictly locked into time at all moments, where it's like, well, if I hear the click in my ear, but if I can writ through the click and I can fight away that urge to play perfectly in time, I do that whenever I can because otherwise the audience, especially after 8 minutes, they're just feeling time and they never feel something that's out of time necessarily. On the other side, Brian does give you those metric retardandos. And because he gives you that, there are moments that the audience might be like, well, I don't really understand. Maybe that was it's slowing down. It's out of time. Well, that's great. But we need to add to that. So like those moments for me, like at letter A, you have these 5-lit based patterns. I think you do more with it. I think you like a cell and decel even throughout that, as long as you're not locked in one-to-one with something in the track that you're supposed to be aligning with. So that's the one time that you can't do it is if you're locked in like that. So that's kind of like a big picture comment about this. So real quick, let me kind of ask you before we keep going. Is like, how do you think of this piece? And scrap the glockenspiel stuff. Just tell me about the snare drumming. How do you feel about the relationship from track to solo part? Like, what's going through your head as you've studied this and you've prepared it?
Yeah. So the beginning, it at least how I saw it, the beginning leading up to B was definitely. I think everything prior to B leads to B. Like I think if the piece were to start anywhere else, it would start at B.
Yeah.
So I kind of just see the beginning to A as a slow incorporation of drumming to what the track already is. Because the track starts pretty mysteriously as is, and then progressively gets more present. So I think it's really just an introduction of texture. Into okay, now I'm kind of acquainting the listener with the idea of like hearing the track and also hearing a drum at the same time, you know.
So I'm with you on that. Like for the beginning stuff, like you're just trying to create a sound world. You're trying to get people integrated into it and understand what, you know, set some level of expectation. And I think as I look at these absolutely jacked up rhythms on the first page throughout all that, you play those rhythms really well in time, but you still feel this locked in sensation to some sense of time. I want you to almost like, and it would be tough. Like, do you have a click in your ear when you do this?
Yes.
Yeah. So like playing off the click if you can, and just making it feel organic when it's not.
Mm-hmm.
That is the most important thing. So as I look, let's go measure 13, right? You have these like these upbeat entry like sextuplets and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you could, I don't know, let's give a random example. If you could achel each one of those a little bit, you know, just to create some other undulating type motion within the phrase, that's going to give us the impression that you're not just playing like displaced sextuplets. And like a general audience listener doesn't know what that means, but they know how it feels. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
They're not like total idiots. Like sometimes we think of an audience member as like, oh, they'll never get these rhythms. And it's like, no, but they feel that it's a constant thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to create the sensation of actual phrased music happening, not just these written rhythms. So in some sense, I think like another way that Brian could have written some of these phrases is just with a lot of rits and achels to the metronome, and just let you decide how you wanted to phrase those things up and down. I think that would be way more challenging to notate and for you to practice, but it's actually more musically freeing in the end, and I think that's ultimately what he's going for with a lot of these.
Mm-hmm.
So also, tell me about like your choice of drum. This is the age-old thing. Oh, you used the wrong mallets, you used the wrong drums. I'm not going there, but I am curious about like how you think of the sound that you're trying to match with this track.
Yes. So the high drum, like the main snare drum, is it's a Majestic Opus 1. I think it's like 3.5. Yeah, 3.5 by 14. And that one's just supposed to be tuned really tight, really crisp. I wanted it to be a little wetter on the edge. So I kind of set it to be a little bit looser. It comes off more crisp in the recording for sure. But I think that's just kind of like a general like orchestral snare drum. I kind of tune it how I always have it. And then the second drum, I kind of modeled after a Mudra drum, but just a little bit more dead. So that one's like a 6.5 multisonic. And that one's tuned up kind of high, like high enough to where without the Freer mutes, it has like a definite pitch. And then it has a Freer mute folded up and then a handkerchief on top just to kind of kill it.
Yeah. Let me give you like an idea that's not necessarily, this is something that Colin Curry told me once, and it's not about snare drumming, actually, it's about marimba, but I like this concept. I try to apply this concept across the board as much as I can, which is use this. He always says about marimba, use the softest mallet you can in the moment. Like that's possible, that's appropriate, you know. So I always think about that because what that tells me is that he's really concerned about tone. Because we all know that hard mallets on marimba, just that glassy sound is not, to me, I don't love that sound. Only if you need that sound do I ever go to it. And so to me, this is the same idea. Like he's talking about tone, and maybe even I would use the word warmth by saying that. And I would say the same thing about this and a lot of in any other situation. It's like use the darker, fuller, richer sounds that you can. So I think the drums to me, and I know when you mic these things, they sound more sibilant and then high and attacky. I would go darker on everything because there's a sense of brooding in this track, and I think the drums can mimic that. And when I hear like, I know what the little moleskin on the edge of the drum means. It means like orchestral, you know, like you're setting your sticks. So I already have this in my head of like orchestral sound as I see this and I hear this, you know, ticky drum. I would go darker on everything, like significantly, because then you're actually adding resonance to the performance. We talked resonance on marimba in the last last performance, but here we're talking about like, let's see if we can fill out more sound just as the soloist. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think out of everything that I a lot of things stayed constant throughout the months that I worked on this piece, but I think the tuning never did.
Mhm.
I would find an interval that I really enjoyed because with the cross drum stuff, they kind of needed to be a desirable interval, at least for my ear. And
Mhm.
so I would experiment with the interval. I noticed that the interval would get wider, but the drums collectively would get higher as time went on.
Mm.
And I think it's just because my playing became more accurate and I became a little more consistent. And I was like, oh, I could like get away with like just like, you know,
Yeah.
bringing it up a little bit. But I do agree. I think in retrospect, like after like taking that recording and absorbing it, because I haven't had a really great recording of this since my recital.
Mhm.
And that's like the school owned microphone. So it's not very great. Taking a look back, I think I would especially bring the tom, like the mudra drum
Mhm.
and I do wish that the higher drum was also a little bit lower. Yeah.
I think like if that is that truly a 3.5 inch depth snare?
Mhm.
So I mean that is tiny, bro.
Yeah.
like like to me a general snare sound is 14 by 5. I know everyone's going to argue about this back and forth. I use a 14 by 4 brass in the orchestra all the time, but I'm in the orchestra and I'm trying to cut, I'm trying to be
Mhm.
heard, and 14 by 5 to me is like this general warm-ish, sound, and it depends on how you tune it, of course. I think you go to a bigger drum. I think you should be less concerned about like super art. Do I get all the snare response at the edge? Who cares? Like
Mhm.
snare response at the edge to me is something that only really matters in the orchestra when I'm trying to play unbelievably soft. In a solo setting, we want to hear resonant drums. Like I know you're supposed to mute the low drum. I think it's too dead. Give it
Mhm.
some like let's have some life to your sound. I mean, think about this uh, bass players, saxophone players, trumpet players, like jazzers, pop artists. Everybody thinks about their sound, right? Like you're known by your sound. Who am I? Louis Armstrong, right? Nobody else sounds. I mean, come on, no one sounds like that, right? He's
Mhm.
known for his sound. We just crank the crap out of our drums and think, well, this is the appropriate sound. Well, think about your sound and like what this piece needs. I think this piece is like dark and mysterious and you get the contrast of the glockenspiel. You get a lot of contrast in the recording itself. So I don't know. I think like be more concerned. Not just you. I'm talking like to everybody now, like about the way that we sound, especially snare drums. We don't just need to crank them. We don't
Mhm.
just need the most ultimate response. That response doesn't actually matter a lot to in a piece like this.
Mhm.
Okay, let's keep moving real quick. What time we got? We're doing good. Um, so as we get into what's up, Megan? Are we good?
Oh, I thought you meant to keep moving to the next person. Yeah,
Oh
y'all
no no no.
talking about this for
We're in here. We're
more.
we're, we're
Yeah,
still
yeah.
going.
Okay, nice. Thank you.
You're yeah yeah yeah. So talk to me about some of this Glock stuff as well. Like your concept of this Glock, is it just accompanimental? I mean, there's a little interjection moment and then there's the constant moment.
Mhm.
What do you?
The interjection moment is definitely more antiphonal. I think I'm secondary to the track at that point.
Mhm.
It's very there are so many rests. It goes on for a very long time at this
Yeah.
section. So I think it's mainly just a transition from like this main section to the cadenza. So I kind of just stay out the way and try not to look as obstructive as possible while like just playing with the whole because there's also a glockenspiel playing underneath all this. So it's kind of like a smoke and mirrors, like, oh, what is he playing?
Right.
So I try to move a little more than I normally would to make people a little confused on like what's actually being
I
played.
like that. I like that you're thinking that way because I think you're right. Number one, you said you stay out of the way when there's a lot of rests.
Mhm.
I find like if you ever have the chance to play a concerto, when the orchestra takes over for 24 bars, what I always noticed that people would do is they would walk to the side of the stage and literally physically get out of the way. And I'm like, I love that concept. So in an electronic piece, that's great. And just sidebar, if you ever have the chance to do anything with lighting here,
Mhm.
be in the shadows. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a cool thing. Anyway, sorry. So I like also what you said about moving to show what you are. Like, are you talking about moving while you're playing on the Glock to show that it's actually you doing that, or?
Yeah, so there's like in between every Glock interjection, probably like half a beat before and half a beat after, there's
Mhm.
like glockenspiel in the track.
Right.
So I'll play what I actually play, but I think I add a little bit of extraneous motion to give the illusion that I might be playing more than I usually am, or
Oh, cool.
not be. I think it's especially when the right balance is achieved. It's really cool to have people to be like, "Wait, what did he play? I saw his arms move twice, but there were like 8 notes. Like, what's going on?"
Mhm.
You know, I think that's really interesting to play with, like in person.
Yeah. Is there any hope of you ever memorizing this? Or is that
Yeah,
great?
I do have it memorized.
Oh, wow.
I relearned the piece back in like a week before the Black Swamp recording. So I just kind of kept the music there for safety. But like this is memorized.
Cool, because I think the effectiveness of this piece too, if you can get your eyes off a score and just commit to the piece, it's way more convincing than someone like if I see you play a million notes and I see you reading a million notes, I'm like, oh, he's just reading a million notes, like, as opposed to, oh, there's what the hell, he's doing all this crazy stuff on snare drum, and it sounds cool and it looks committed and all that.
Mhm.
Yeah, to me, it's just bigger picture stuff like we talked about. What's your sound? How can you like measure 149? You have these random fivelet, what can you do with something like that? Because you do that right afterwards with a feathered beam. He gives you the feathered beaming on the next one, but the first one is perfectly in time as these fivelets. It's like mess with time in the fivelets just as you did in the feather beaming. Just treat it as two of the same thing, but one slower, as opposed to strict fivelet pulses and all that. And then last thing is there are times and places in big snare drum ram pieces like this to play accent tap style, and I think you do that great. Like where you're this.
Mhm.
Then other times if you can really crescendo us to the accents and make us feel more like more phrases as opposed to just peaks and valleys. I
Mhm.
want to actually get to these moments more gradually. So that could apply to a lot of places. At the end, measure 171. You're playing. You're these like what would you call this? Like paradiddle diddles with an extra diddle, right? You're doing all that. It's like maybe maybe you crescendo some of those because you're playing so many in a row. You do the first two static, then the next ones you start to crescendo to each accent, stuff like that. I mean, it's whatever you can do to add interest to this, but it's a cool piece. And as we went through it, I noticed or I remembered that I have seen a video of Elliot doing this, and maybe have you posted your video?
Yes. Yeah.
I think I've seen this come across my feed. Maybe,
Oh.
I don't know, but it started to sound familiar as we went through it. So, anyways, do you have any questions? Anything?
No, I think this is all great information. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of higher like overview stuff, but no one. I mean, you can play cheeses just fine. You can play double paradiddles. Like I don't need to tell you how to do any of that.
Mhm.
So yeah, keep it up. And I think if you can find an opportunity to do something with lights in a live setting with this, whether you have just a lighting person with a board out front, or if you have the ability to mess with time code and program lights, this could be very effective in that sense, I think.
Yeah.
And I think Elliot's piece is very staged, if I remember his performance.
Mhm.
Doesn't
Yeah.
he have like projection?
Yeah. Yeah.
See that smart man. All right. Well, cool, dude. Thanks for sharing your stuff here. This is awesome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Awesome job, Noah. Really, really great recording. The snare drum tuning was very crisp, but I liked it a lot. I thought it was super cool for the recording. I was like, okay. Yeah.
The snare sounds great.
Thank you.
It sounds great. I just,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I hear so much tight snare drumming. All I do in my life now is play tight snare drums, I feel like. So I'm
Mhm.
like, any chance I get, I have a cast iron 6.5.
Yeah.
And it's not the Majestic, it's a decibel, and it is a meaty drum. Like anytime I can play a drum like that, I just get it out,
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome job. Really, really great.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I will take Noah off stage, and we have a special guest to interject
Oh,
for our
snap.
next performance.
What's
Hey,
up,
guys.
man?
How you doing?
Oh, life's so hard. I'm out at sea. Oh my God.
Hey, listen, thank you both so much for carrying the weight. I really appreciate it.
Oh man. Well, thank you for, drinking all the Aperol spritzes that you could possibly handle. Dude,
You
I'm
wanna-
so
You want to
jealous.
see the sunset right now?
No, actually, I don't. That's beautiful, man.
So-
That's so cool. Where are you at?
Still so calm,
So
the water.
this is. I was thinking when I was walking back to the cabin. This is super ironic because the last time I think we met was obviously on the tour, from what I
Mhm.
remember, and we've just been in Tallinn. So that was pretty much our last trip.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
it was.
crazy. 2017.
It is. I can't believe it was that many years ago.
Yeah, and Tallinn have a brand new console we just played in today. It's amazing.
Is it at the university still, or is it separate?
Yeah, same place, but it's yeah, like check the photos on Facebook. I put them on earlier. It's really good. But yeah, anyway, I'm not gonna cloud this because this is great. But thank you so much for stepping in, Megan, and thanks, Cameron, for all you're doing. This is great. I have been here for the last 15 minutes just watching, just so you know. So.
Oh, geez. Don't checking my work. Don't do that. Say hello to, I think who's there? Nate. Who's there? David and
We have a lot of Eastman guys. So we've got
Yeah.
Michael Lee Smith. Do you know Michael?
I
Daniel
don't know
Davis.
Michael.
Who's some of the older ones? Do you know Cass? Cass Lowe?
I don't think so.
Okay. We got a lot of Eastman guys, so
That's awesome.
they're
so
doing
cool.
great. They're doing great. So
Good.
they're doing Michael proud.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, have fun.
So I'm not going to interject too much. At some point, I will start interjecting in this academy, but when I'm back. But it's all going great. So thank you, Megan. And yeah, who's next up?
Next up, we have Burke. Hello. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you'll be playing?
I am Burke Rivette. I am currently a second year at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and I have two shorter pieces. One is Batucada from Pablo Riepi's book, Rhythmic Roots. It is like a drum set style multi-setup, and the other one is Tess Claire by De La Cluse, both of which were recorded for Lucerne Festival. But
Nice.
they're pretty fun pieces. I really like them.
Yeah, Tess Claire's not. Neither of these look easy. I don't know this. I don't know this thing from Pablo, but
It's pretty gnarly. I love it.
it looks cool. Yeah, and I didn't have a chance to watch this beforehand, so this is gonna be it's gonna be first time for me. So I'm excited. Which one do you want to do first? Oh, the Batucada.
Batucada is great. It's
Okay.
already pulled up.
Cool. Let's do it. Mm. Yeah. Oh, geez. I love that. That is badass. Oh my God.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
I did not. I'm looking at the music and I didn't register the tempo that this was going to be at. And so when you started playing, I'm like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing.
That's actually a little bit under what it's marked as well.
Well, I think that's plenty fast.
Me too. Me too. I was like, this feels great.
Wow. So you said your second year at Knoxville.
Yes.
So you're with Andy and with Kevin and okay. I bet. Have you played this for Kevin?
I actually don't think so. I'm sure he's seen it at some point.
Yeah, I was gonna say this sounds like something.
You seem to know that.
Yeah, it sounds like it'd be something he'd dig. Look, I'm gonna be real with you. I don't have a lot to say. I'll give you like a couple small comments, but this is at a really, really high level. I think you know it too. I mean, it's not. Yeah.
I tried.
So let me give you just a few little things. The first is kind of like just it's gonna sound obvious, right? All the dynamics on the page you're nailing. It's great. There are moments now where in any repetitive figure, and I've probably already said this at one point today, like let's say you have some over the bar line sixes, something like that.
Yeah.
Where you are doing exactly what it says, like an accent. I think for me, one thing I try to, in that, I'll maybe take the taps down. So last two taps, even lower than the diddles to create some higher sense of separation between those notes. And then it would be up to you whether you wanted to add, let's say, a macro crescendo through that entire moment or something bigger picture. Sometimes you don't need it because it's flying by so fast that people just want to hear the rhythmic agita between the hands and the feet. And you don't really need a big crescendo. But I think even that separation where you can barely hear the last two, almost ghosting some of those notes. Now, I know like in that setup, when you have the kick and everything, and your head is kind of over here, in a perfect world, I think you would get the music more directly in front of you so that you're not looking to over your shoulder. But because you have more physical stuff going on with your feet, and you're kind of grooving as you should with your body as well, that's sometimes playing little teeny tiny ghost notes is more challenging than if you're just playing like a snare etude and you're doing it to really maximize that lower volume. But I think just finding moments to play those ghost notes to create even higher senses of separation, because I mean, otherwise all of your accents and your taps were crystal clear. We got it. So I'm just trying to give you something to make it even more, musical, I guess. So that's kind of one idea that I've got. Man, and the end was killer. Very, very cool. And the writing at the end was just incredible. Talk to me about your tell me what your biggest kind of challenge to tackle this piece besides the notes on the page. Like what is something that you've been focusing on, and also how long have you been playing this? Remind me.
I actually learned this last summer, so about the course over like 2 months, I learned it, and I didn't play it much after that. But it's kind of the thing I've just kept in my back pocket. I played it for my run out, and I recorded it for Loose Aaron, but I haven't done too much like dedicated work on it in the past year or so. It's kind of just something I've been able to like practice for 2 hours and whip back out. But I played a lot of marching snare drum in high school, and I marched drum corps, so I already have a lot of the facilitation that was in this solo. So I kind of learned this over the summer as a rejection of like the music I was learning in school. I was kind of like, oh, I'm going to just learn something that I just want to learn. I'm going to learn something that looks like a blast to play, that's super groovy and fun. So that was my intention. But what I ended up learning a lot from it was a lot of what you were talking about in Noah's session about musicality and the macro scheme of things, and finding like the biggest points and where to lead into rhythms, and adding my own dynamics into the page, and making the snare drum really sound more like a marimba or a melodic instrument with phrasing, and you know what I'm saying. Trying to make the snare drum sound more like music rather than what I've been taught in drum corps and marching band. So it was really, really helpful for me to break the habit and learn how to really play musically.
Well, interestingly, like, okay, I actually wouldn't have I guess, when I saw you play, I didn't think, oh, he, marched drum corps. I didn't actually think that. So
That's exactly what I want.
well, that's good. Like most folks that come from that, their hands still have a look to them, right?
Yeah.
And I played quads, right? I marched drum corps back in the day, out on the West Coast, and we play very much French, out there, and my hands always look like that playing even concert snare drum, and so I've gotten away from it now, and I have very jacked up looking hands now. I'm off the stick a bunch. I just do a lot of like I'll play like this,
Mm-hmm.
in the orchestra because you're just going for different things. So it's interesting that your hands had that look and the functionality. It's so sometimes people go for a look but not functionality of the hands, right? Especially as you come from drum corps. It's like, hey, make your hands look like West Coast, but they still function in an East Coast way. That's the way I still look at it. I'm an old school, drum corps guy, I guess. But I think let me think about how I want to say this. You're talking about Noah's session and some of the macro micro stuff. But when you have a sense of time, when you have your feet going with this, and we can feel the time, it actually makes you not have to worry about the macro as much. And this is something that this is a theory I'm throwing out. Feel free to disagree with me. We can hash this out because I don't know yet. But I think when you can feel the sense of time, you're no longer just trying to phrase like nebulous notes over just some span of 5 minutes. You're now grounded in time that doesn't change in the piece. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So with the grounding of time, then everything is just, I don't want to say etude like, but it's just moment to moment. And within this piece, there was never a time where I thought like, oh, we're at the golden ratio moment. We're at the peak moment of the piece. I never really felt that, but I didn't need to feel it because all I'm doing is I'm just grooving with you. And if the groove is right, you take me on the journey. And I think this piece to me, I worry a lot more about the micro phrases, not necessarily measure by measure. I mean, like 4 bar,
Yeah.
6 bar, 2 bar. Those are more important to just create a series of moments because I don't really think, frankly, you're telling a story in here. And some pieces you don't need to tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this functions a little bit differently. What I think is funny about this is usually when I hear something, you just hear snare etude or whatever. It's like I never think to myself, wow, I'd love to play that on a public concert for a general audience because I just think so much of that is just madness and chaos. An audience would love this piece, and that's what differentiates it for me, is just because the way it's written, you can always feel grounded. You know that there are just mega effed up things happening in your hands, but like you don't care because you feel solid through it all. And so I think actually worry less about like big picture form on a piece like this. If you can get there, that's great. If your big picture moment is all the crazy 5-lit stuff that you're trying to get to, or maybe the big picture moment is like, I don't know, what would it be? I mean, what's the height of the piece? Maybe that's it.
The spot that I was kind of going for was the last page, the end of the first line, where it kind of gets all. I'm trying to get like super rudimental accent tap there.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I want the whole thing to lead to.
Okay. But either way, I mean, I don't think I could ever feel you leading there based on what happens before it, because like it's not like you ramp into it. You have all these, So to me, it's a little more episodic, and I guess that's fine. But I like that you're kind of thinking about what we talked about with Noah as well, because I think that what Noah and I were talking about is something that applies to most other snare drum things. Whereas in this case, because you get the Tompkins feet going, like you don't need as much of it. So let's do test clear then, because I mean you nailed this, and you nailed this.
Thank you.
Let's do test clear, and then we'll talk about that a little bit. Yeah. Jeez. Only a couple small things, you know, like, and let me scroll up here. Okay. So I'm looking at this one, sorry, on a second monitor if you see me looking down. Um, all of the so your phrasing, I love the lilt in your phrasing. It's great. You know, all the assigned value to the six notes within a 6/8. I always talk about that, and the way that I always teach it is Delacluse 1. You know, that's how you can start to feel lilt in all of these kinds of 6/8 things. There are a few things where I think you actually your drum is super crisp, and I think you probably need that for something like this. You're,
Mhm.
in my opinion, maybe over accenting just a little bit at the starts of certain things. You know, you have a little too much forte piano in that, so
Okay.
it's like that's something where there are three. Let's call this like a spectrum, like a yeah. Let's look at this as like a line. There are three kind of points on the line. One is somebody comes in and they play this, and there's zero phrasing like that, and you go, okay, you don't get it. The second one is somebody overphrases, which I think you're doing just a little bit on some of the accents, and I'm like, you get it, and you're definitely trying to show me you get it,
Mhm.
and I hear you, but I'm also I want you to go to the third level, which is like that ultra musical maturity moment where it's like just this most subtle phrase, because then it's not spoon feeding it to somebody. And here's the deal: who's listening to you play Test Claire that cares about you playing this? It's someone that's nerding out about those things. It's
Yeah.
not if you're playing for a general audience, then don't play this so soft anyways, because you can get away with it, and phrase it more, like even more than you are, right?
Mhm.
But to the person that's probably listening to you play this in an audition, they really want subtlety, in my opinion. Um, and the other one, I think it was here on that phrase.
Mhm.
I think you went.
Mhm.
I think that's a little too much, because that moment to me is probably. Do you know what piece that's from in like orchestral literature? Do you happen to know?
Not off the top of my head. I know that I
Alvarado
hear it. I hear it.
Alvarado del Grazioso by Ravel. I'm like 90% sure I would assign that moment. At least there's basically a snare drum rip in that piece that's that, right? So go listen to Alvarado. It's great. That
Alvarado.
moment to me, I would never play, and I try to always assign orchestral moments to Delacluse. Obviously, he's
Mhm.
doing that himself, including all the Scheherazade quotes and Capriccio. But because that moment I would assign to Ravel, I would never play that with that forte piano on the long phrase. I would almost flat, but like with just a little dip, a little accent like you're doing, but 75% less. You know.
Yeah.
Um, then let's see. On all of those, I think just make darn sure that your phrasing, however you want to go. If you want to add a little button to the front of it, fine. If you want to play it flat, fine. But I think play them all the same. And to me, it's like whenever I see that phrase, whenever I see the Capriccio stuff, I always add just a teeny accent, the smallest possible accent to the first note. Don't get it.
Mhm.
Don't get it. And have you played the Capriccio excerpt?
Mhm.
Okay. Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay. So the Capriccio excerpt is the long roll, and then after the long roll, you have dum ticka ticka dum
Yeah.
and the violins are playing ricochet bow. Ticka ticka dum and they're just letting it bounce. And so there's a natural decay.
Mhm. Yeah.
So because of that, anytime I see like Delacluse 9, I see in Test Claire, and you have it's just a small accent and a slight decrescendo to that phrase every time.
Mhm.
Just as when you see the Scheherazade quote, you know,
Mhm.
that should have a little bit of a
A bit of a lift.
growth to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah. Now here's a really like super specific thing, and it could just be the recording quality of your drum. Whenever I open up a loud snare roll, I try to make sure the very first note that I play, like a loud buzz roll, I try to make sure the very first note is the longest possible sound I can get. To me, I felt like sometimes you have like that growing and it felt like the first note of the roll was a little tight, and so the roll didn't start like this. Wow. It was like za, you know, it felt a little like this. So I go like with the crappiest technique ever with my wrist and lengthen that first note as much as I can.
Mhm.
Also, does it sound like total crap when I play on this, or can you hear it?
It's not too bad. I can hear
Okay.
it.
Cool. One other little thing. This is just for you to check on your own, and you can take this or leave it. I just have a philosophy on loud buzz rolls on snare drum now that I never really knew until I slow mode myself on my phone camera. Some people play triple strokes.
Mhm.
I actually play flammed triple strokes. And I don't. How do you think about your loud buzz rolls? Do you think triple strokes, or do you just think like I'm playing a loud buzz?
I do think triple strokes, but I don't think in time triple strokes. I think triple strokes that are kind of too long, you know, so they kind of go into each other a little bit more than jigga 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 jigga. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. And so I'm taking that concept that you're kind of talking about, where, for instance, like if you did truly just play 3 notes on each hand and you overlap them, I mean, you get flam taps, right?
Mhm.
And you can just play flam taps as fast as you would ever want. Nico Jasnowitz, if you've ever seen the 2004 I&E solo he did, he marched on the Blue Devil snare line.
Mhm.
There's a moment in that solo where he goes flam taps, and he's like, and then he goes flam taps even faster. And it's just because he's overlapping triple strokes.
Mhm.
And what I realize is the way that I play buzz rolls is the same thing, but I just do it with threes. And so it's not a lot of like mental work. You just have to
Mhm.
feel what that motion's like. And it actually, to me, helps the roll feel more filled out. And so I guess what I'm getting at too is that when you start a buzz roll at a loud dynamic, to me, I'm going for essentially 4 notes, which lengthens that first entrance of the buzz roll just a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it helps it feel big from the very beginning. So what is it?
Mhm.
It just feels more broad. And it's interesting to check yourself on a slow-mo camera, because I always preach this, and then I actually check myself, and I'm like, I am literally playing chickada 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 chickada, and you can hear the sound difference between that and lifted threes, which I think a lot of people do when they learn that kind of Philly style thing. Okay, sorry to go all nerd on you, but I think we can talk on this level. Like, this is, you know, you have great hands, obviously, and
Thank
these
you.
are a lot of things that I like to think about. Do you have any other thoughts or questions or moments in here that you'd want to talk about?
Yes, the second page, the end of the first line.
Okay. Yeah, and you were doing what?
I was doing my left's all up and my right hand's as the double. Yeah.
Okay, and I think, like, are you thinking doubles, or are you just kind of thinking like fit in a slight buzz drag? Like, how are you thinking of that?
It's kind of too fast for me to be able to hear where the doubles exactly line up. So
Yeah.
I don't think that I exactly decided which way, like, oh, I'm going to think of this as a buzz or a double. But I certainly don't hear it as a straight double, although I probably am playing 2 notes.
Okay.
It's really way too fast, and I think the way I played it in that video, I don't love it. That's why I ask about this, because it kind of sounds like digga-da-da instead of you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It sounds like the doubles aren't tight enough because it's so fast, and I feel like the rhythm isn't there. I'm
Mhm.
not sure how to get that bar to sound how it looks.
Yeah. Here's the way that I would sing it. It's like it's basically a buzz in my mind.
Mhm.
But check this out. The buzz that I would do, I call this it's almost like a lifted or light buzz. It's an upstroke where you just touch it and you get off, right? So it's the same. It's a little bit of the same concept as when I play Scheherazade. There's a loud excerpt at letter P. I'm lifting that buzz out. It's the same thing. I'm just doing this, and I'm essentially locked in my hand. And I'm creating. I'm over pressured in my hand. I'm locking it, and the motion to me is just an arm motion to get it in and out. So you're just not clouding anything up. That's it. you know, and it
Mhm.
just sounds chaotic, but as long as you hear "sha-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta," then you know you're good, and then it's just making sure that you're not in the way sonically with the buzz. So it's or with the drag rather. So play it as soft as you can and just in and out. It's this weird motion. But I had to practice like,
Yeah.
these arm things. People always talk about Chris Lamb, how he lifts out of his drags, and it is a cool thing. It's a good check for yourself to make sure you're only there as long as you need to be before you get off the head. Um, yeah, I think I know what you mean. I'm trying to think back to the way you played it in there. I think it was maybe a little chaotic, like you're saying. You hear that inner thing, so sing it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just go for that sound.
Yeah. That makes
Cool.
sense.
And then when you were going down, how were you? Were you just doing this straight like that?
Yeah.
Cool. And you were playing those pretty short, right? The
Yeah.
individual little rolls. Okay.
Mhm.
I thought it was fine. I mean, it was very identified in the time. You know, um, it was great. Good stuff. And your timing on your long roll. I was like counting through it, and it was about as close as counting through a long roll could ever. You know what I'm
That's
saying.
so good to hear.
And when you do this too, when you play a piece like this, or you play excerpts, let's say, which I despise, absolutely think excerpts are the stupidest thing ever. But when you play something like this for a committee or in a lesson, whether you're behind a screen or not, um, I always, in moments where time is like I'm resting or I'm playing long rolls, I'm always showing time with my body for
Yeah.
myself. And then if you have a committee on the other end and there's no screen in front of you and they can see that, you're going to convince them of the time. They're going to stop counting to themselves and they're going to watch you for it. And then they
Mhm.
believe you. So
Yeah.
that's a little cheat code. And then the other thing is if you are behind a screen and you're ever playing something like this for somebody, even though they can't see you, at least you yourself are keeping yourself in time. People that just stand there and play a long roll and guess in their brains, I don't understand that.
I couldn't do it.
It doesn't make sense.
I'd be so uncomfortable. I don't know.
You're just guessing. You're just hoping at that point. All right, well this is great. You nailed
It
both of these.
was.
I don't think
Thank
I really need to send you like scans of it. You got
I
it
took
on a
notes.
higher level. Yeah, you
I
took
wrote it all
notes.
down.
It's great. Thanks,
That was
Burke. I can't
really,
wait to see
really
what you
helpful.
do.
Thank you so much. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Awesome.
Amazing job, Burke. You sounded awesome. So good. Yeah.
That's
Hi,
a
Tim.
really, really interesting final comment you just made, because that's exactly what I took from today's performance. Because obviously I'm getting to know everyone on the live tour, and you could literally see, I don't know if this is taught or what, but the Eastman guys very much treat time with their body.
Yeah.
And when you bring people together that are not from there, it was quite clear. So I don't know if that's sort of taught or just something you build up when you're together, or I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is taught a little bit there, because there's so much chamber music at Eastman, and you're always just trying to figure out how to play with people on a short timeline. And then the other thing, I remember doing the WPG rehearsals, and I think we had 2 days of rehearsal, and it was so tight, and we had 45 minutes on each piece each day, and that desperation to get through it forces you to communicate on a level that you've never had to, because you have to do it.
Yeah,
You know,
that's exactly what the guys are going through right now. So yeah,
it's fun. I mean, it's make or break, but I think it's like the biggest learning experience to go through that.
As I said in the show today, like if you can do that live with the tour, you can pretty much handle anything.
Yeah.
With the lack of warm up and everything, because obviously that's not normal. So, but yeah, that's just something that struck a chord when you just said that. I was watching today. I was thinking, I'm looking at the bodies from Eastman, and definitely doing that with their bodies. The pulse is there. So, and it's the visual cues that they're all giving each other with the pulse is very in sync. So yeah.
Awesome.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's funny too how that like when I was preparing for my orchestra audition last summer, and there was not going to be a screen, for the audition. then I knew that I could communicate things to the committee in a different way because they could see my body. So I almost felt like, because I'm so used to moving my body from my time at Eastman and WPG, that it was a little bit of a cheat code for me, that I'm like, well, if I sell it, they're going to believe that that's the time, you know? And I think that
Totally.
actually worked out that way.
Yeah,
So,
completely. Yeah. Yeah,
anyways,
great work, but really nice, excellent
yeah.
work.
All right. Well, good
All right.
stuff.
Awesome. Burke, do you have any more questions? Anyone else in the session? I'll go ahead and take you off stage. Jake, Noah, Jack, anyone else from the YouTube? Does anybody have any questions for Cameron for the last little bit of the session? No?
I talk too
We'll
much,
just-
sorry.
We'll just give him a little time. You probably did this already. I didn't catch the beginning, but tell us a bit about what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so I've made it my goal for the remainder of this year, this calendar year, to focus on, well, the orchestra job over the last year. I've officially won the job, and I just got tenure in December, so I'm good there,
Nice.
and I'm just trying to
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm trying to streamline systems now, whether it's logistics or all that like admin work. And so I feel like I'm at a really great point with that. And then for the remainder of the year, I've decided that I'm going to take the whiskey channel, to a certain level where financially it can support what I'm doing. Um, and at the end of that, then I'm gonna start booking things again and start touring. I've done little solo shows and things that I haven't talked about, or behind the scenes, or like stuff that I haven't really promoted, just to kind of get back to it. And I'm talking to some people about some concerto commissions and different things like that over the next couple of years, and we'll kind of see where it goes. But I figured one thing about, sorry to go on a little tangent about all this, but one thing about getting on the road and doing this is that your fee structure, like when you start out, is very low. You're doing free gigs and very cheap gigs. But then now that I haven't played on the road for a few years, I know that I can't ask for a certain level of money on the road, but I also can't go out and play a bunch of free gigs because I have a job. And so to me, I thought, well, let's get the Whiskey Channel to a financial place that it supports me, where I can go play for less money than I used to, and build that back up so that it is financially responsible. Because once you have a wife and you're talking about kids and talking about buying a house, it's just a different conversation. Like, you can't go on the road for a week and come home with $500. It just doesn't work. So, anyways, I'm mainly just focusing on the whiskey thing right now, and the orchestra job until I'd say 2025. Oh, Tim probably
I
lost
think
connection.
they're moving out to sea. But yeah, that's super insightful. I had a couple questions along the lines of that, of how
Sure.
you would balance doing a little bit of everything, I guess, as you would say, some teaching, some orchestra, some solo things. But Burke has one question, so let's
Yeah.
go ahead and ask that one.
Cameron, in 22 or 23, I believe you played a solo concert at PASIC, correct?
Yeah.
And you played a French piece about a ball, if I remember.
Yeah.
I was there. I was in the front row. I was a freshman, and seeing that piece, the French ball piece, I don't remember anything about it, honestly, or the title or anything. I just remember your incredible performance of it. That really was quite revolutionary for me in terms of like percussion literature and seeing what is possible. And ever since I saw that, I've been so interested in like theatrical percussion and alternative like forms. I've looked at pieces like Cangelosi's Bad Touch, if you know that one.
Yeah.
And Le Corps à Corps and all this theatrical percussion stuff. And I just wanted to ask what as a performer and from your perspective in the practice room, even, it's probably very different from the rest of what we do, but I'm just curious as to how you go about learning those things, and what skill sets you need to be able to perform those things at a high level.
That's a good question. It's because what's funny is that with theatrical percussion, let me back up. When you normally play a marimba piece or a snare drum piece, you can kind of get a sense, even without recording yourself, I think you can get a sense of like whether you're executing it well or not. It's just and if you record yourself, you might find that certain things aren't exactly what you thought, but by and large, let's say you get 80% of an impression of how you're coming across to somebody. With the theatrical stuff, you absolutely cannot get, you have no idea what's happening, and the only check that you have for yourself is the audience. So I'm sorry to bring this back. I already mentioned stand-up comedy once today, but I do think of it in the same way where a stand-up comic can't practice their jokes without an audience. And it's the same thing for theatrical percussion in a lot of ways. Like you can learn the choreography, but you have no idea if it's actually going to come off to an audience member. And for me, I remember when I started doing the bouncy ball piece, I always just call it the bouncy ball piece. The technical title is "This Is Not a Ball," and it's in French, um, which is a great one. And it's actually not that hard to learn. When I started playing that piece, I think that was, I don't know if that was first or not, or if Le Corps was first. I tried to play it as many times in front of an audience as I could because of the bouncy ball piece, if you're nailing it because people are laughing, then you're winning. Like that, yeah, you know what I mean? It's like yes or no. Is the audience laughing? And then you try new things because I know the moves and every performance is vastly different for that piece because I'm always playing to who's in the front row. I'm always, if there's kids in the room, I always turn my attention to the kids because they start laughing, and the sound of children's laughter makes the entire room start laughing. It's just a contagious thing. Then Le Corps, that one's a little tougher, and I had to watch a lot of videos of myself because the audience doesn't give you anything in that piece. Like they are deadly silent. And that's a little bit of a different experience. But what I started finding for myself is it's going to sound really kind of, I don't want this to sound like too in my own head. You kind of go to a different place when you play that. When I'm playing marimba, I'm like, play the right notes, do this phrase. You're managing in your mind. For Le Corps, there were moments in some performances of that where I would not know what I was doing. I'm like, I would have to remind myself, you're on stage. And I remember vividly one time I did it. I had these really bright lights on the sides of the stage, and then I had a spotlight. And so the lights in every direction I looked were completely blinding. I couldn't see anything in the room.
Wow.
And I got so disoriented I didn't know which way I was facing at one point. And it was like this weird, you just felt like you were in a chasm by yourself. And it's a very powerful moment. So my check for Le Corps was always, have you completely lost yourself in the performance?
Wow.
And the check for the bouncy ball pieces is the audience having a good time. And I'll tell you what, like mentally on a concert when you play specifically Le Corps, it is so mentally taxing. It's like 6 or 7 minutes. By the end of that, I can't do anything else after that. I need to take a break. So I usually do it before intermission or something like that because I have to like bring myself back. It's really weird, and it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
So
Seems like a blast.
to practice it in the practice room, definitely you got to have mirrors, you got to record yourself, all that stuff. And then because I march drum corps and especially indoor drumline, they always talked about. Did you march indoor, by the way?
Mm-mm.
So they always talk about like head positions. You have 9 head positions, and you can really like when you turn your head to the side, you should really turn your head to the side so you can see your side profile.
Yeah.
Everything that I think about with theatrical percussion all goes back to that. I have no theater training, no dance training. It's just indoor drumline to me.
That makes so much sense. I see how a lot of the like performance skills can apply. I did march indoor in my high school. I just didn't march independently, so I know I'm familiar with like the performance aspect of the things, at least in a high school level.
Yeah. So I also like everybody has their own personality with theatrical percussion. And I had a student recently play the bouncy ball piece. There's another piece I did on that concert, Control, with the drumsticks, where I'm just miming at the basic concert.
Yeah.
And so he's played both of those pieces this past year. Control is with a K. It's by João Pedro Oliveira. Amazing piece. Everybody has their own interpretation and personality, but there are some non-negotiables with theatrical percussion, in my opinion. It's like if you're going to portray goofiness in the bouncy ball piece, you have to be consistent with your approach through the piece. Like you have to create the personality of what your character is in the piece, and you can't break it just for the sake of saying I want to do that. Well, it's like, but did that read to the audience that suddenly you're noodly doing something that makes no sense with it's the same thing as a marimba phrase. If you crescendo, you have to get to that. You can't just crescendo and then just do something else. Like you have to finish the phrase, you know? Theatrical percussion is the same thing, but it's just visual. You're finishing visual phrases. Um, anyways,
That's
good
really
question.
fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and
I've been thinking about that ball piece like
do
nonstop
it.
since I saw you perform it, man.
Do it. Do it. It's so
It's
fun,
great.
and I have a special click track I use. I could send it to you. It may or may not mean anything to you when you play the piece because it's myself talking to myself in my ear, talking through certain cues. But my student used it. I told him to make his own. He ended up just using mine. If you ever end up playing it, let me know.
Okay,
It's great.
I'm definitely
Yeah.
interested.
Cool.
Thank you
Good
so much.
question though. Yeah. I'm glad you
Yeah.
saw PASIC, and I feel like did you talk to me after the concert? I can't
I
remember.
might have. I really love to talk to performers after concerts, so I
Because you
might
look
have.
because I'm racking my brain like you look so familiar to me, you know. And that was
Nice.
it was a it was a hectic day. But if you were in the front row, then I would have seen you because
It
at the
was.
very least because of the bouncy ball piece and everything else. So
I really
cool.
love that concert.
Thanks.
Well, thanks so much for
Yeah,
answering my
awesome.
question.
Yeah.
If I may interject for 1 second, I was also at that PASIC concert, and it was completely life-changing for me as well. I also, and I wanted to interject a little bit because I think the three of us seem to have very similar backgrounds. Where
Hmm.
I did the drum corps thing, and I played snare drum until I was 21, and then I decided, oh, okay, I want to do other things now.
Yeah.
So totally. And also did indoor drumline in high school, and then decided to just focus on college instead. Like, totally get it. So it's been really cool hearing your advice on both from all the sides, I guess, if that makes sense, from your chamber and solo experience in a master's program versus your drum corps experience with the snare drumming stuff. And yeah, Burke, you sound awesome. And that was so cool listening to you both nerd out about snare drumming. That's my favorite thing to do. So super, super great. I did have one question for you as well, kind of on the topic of how did you begin taking solo performances? Like you just mentioned, oh, I've done a couple on the side, and they might be free or they might be
Hmm.
like not the best job ever for sustainability purposes. But
Hmm.
if you had a program and went, okay, I want to go perform this somewhere, how would you approach that? Would you contact a venue or a school or an organization, or how would that work?
Yeah. The best thing you can do when you first start is to contact. Uh, think about the least friction that you can have with trying to book it. And so to me, the friction is like instruments, like where are you going to get them? You know, the friction is where are you going to get an audience? All you start stacking those things up that you think about. Think of those as friction and try to reduce all the friction you can. And so at the beginning, the university is the best place to do it because you have all the things taken care of. You have literally a captive audience of a percussion studio that at the very least, you're going to have 18 kids in your audience, right? And so then you go get your chops wet and you figure this out, what it feels like to be on stage and do this. What's interesting is that we go through school and we play 1 to 2 recitals, and most people that's all they do in their lives, and then they go teach or they go do this and they never play another recital. It is a different mindset when you play 50 recitals, or when you play 100 recitals, but especially like in the beginning, you play your first 2 to 4 recitals outside of academia. It's a very different feeling, and you don't understand that feeling until you do it on stage. We don't have any programs for us as soloists that mimic like opera singers, right? Opera singers go through these summer festivals, or they do almost like apprenticeship programs, but they do them for years and years and years, and they get experience along the way. They start doing programs that pay them, but they're still not really like professionals, and they work their way into the professional ranks. We have nothing along those lines. We don't even really have competitions to get us there, and the few that do, there are some competitions that people have won and they've fizzled out because you can win a competition. That doesn't mean you have a sustainable career, and no one else can make your career for you. They can send a photographer to you, a videographer, and they can do that. But if you're not actually the person that's meant to be the soloist and put yourself out there and be comfortable in those situations, like you're not going to have a career. It's just the fact of the matter. So the point is, like, we have very few resources as percussion soloists, and the only way to do it is to do free work. And I hate that that's the case, but it's just the case. And we all have to accept it. And you contact universities and you offer to play free recitals in the beginning. And then if a university's cool, or if they have the ability to do this, they'll offer you like $200. Like, oh, don't play for free. We'll get you $200, enough to literally cover your hotel room and your gas. And that would be a very cool move on their end. And maybe they buy you lunch or something. And start there, do 10 of those, and also do it in a way where you've had to book your own tour. Like one off, great. You do 2 in a town, great. Try it where you do 14 days on the road and you're driving yourself with your gear place to place. Like I did a Florida tour that was 14 days in 2019, and it was so eye-opening by myself on the road just driving. I drove from Ohio to Florida, and then I did Florida for 2 weeks, and then I came home. And I was like, if that's what that feels like, okay. um, and I think the most I made on any gig was $500. So like I came home, and at the end of all of it, I think I netted $1,000 for 2 weeks, which is like not terrible at the time. But like looking back on that, that's not a lot of money, in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, and then from there, I think you again want to continue to reduce friction. When you move into the next stage where you want to book a venue outside of a school, you could go rent a small black box theater in your town. Like usually those rentals are pretty available. Black box theaters aren't playing every night with something. So you go find one for $500. But then like you start realizing what this all means. I have to bring all my gear. Oh shit. I have to, have somebody out front selling tickets or sell them ahead of time. I have to have a lot of friends help and volunteer to help me. You just start considering I have to hire the lighting guy and the audio tech for the venue, and then you're in $3,000. And then you got to try to make that money back. And it ends up spiraling out, and that's for one show. So what you really need to do is find series that host things like this. Look at Third Coast schedule. Look at So's schedule. Look at Sandbox's schedule. Look at other soloists that are playing at non-academic venues. Find where they played and contact those venues. But first, you should look at what that venue is hosting and like what the feel is of the series. Do they host new music? Do they want classical? Is it a church series? And play to that in your communications with them. But it's so tough, and eventually you get to the point where you're cold calling, manager. Like you start to meet people. The ultimate thing is you have a booking agent help you out. They're going to take 20%, and then your fees go up and blah blah blah. It starts to skyrocket from there. And sometimes all you need to do is play one big gig, and then your name gets thrown around to a bunch of people in the same circle, and there you go. So anyways, that's a long-winded thing, but it's so nebulous, all of this for people. I don't think it needs to be, but you just have to talk to a lot of different people in the industry, ask a lot of questions, and in your brain you just start to compile it. But there's nobody that could tell you all the answers, because the answers also depend on what style of music you play, how you interact in social situations. Everybody's going to be very different. And the US is a lot less friendly to this than Europe, to be frank. So that's it's a lot.
No, that was a great answer. That was super helpful. um, yeah, I did. I have, funnily enough, had the opportunity to do a couple small things like that in Scandinavia, but have not in the US yet. So,
Yeah.
super interesting how that ends up working out.
Yeah, and you can also like there are other things like fringe festivals. Some cities have fringe festivals that are not just music, but you would just apply with your act, and they will like they will split profit from tickets. So I did this in Rochester once, and it was actually hosted at Eastman, which was kind of a nice thing. So I knew that the gear was there, but having certain credits on your bio or on your CV when you talk to people, if you can say that you've done like if you just say I played at this and this and this school, okay. But if you say I played at this festival and I played on this series, and you just get a couple of those, and it could be the least major thing ever, that goes a very long way for a presenter to see that and be like, okay, well let's book this person, and then if you need gear on the road, try to trade gear for master classes. Hey, I'll do a free master class if you can bring me a marimba for the gig at this place across town. It's always good.
That's great advice for sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Tim, how's the Wi-Fi going? Would you like to come close this out? If not, that's okay.
Pretty terrible here, but if you can hear me, thank you so much.
Yeah, we got you.
I think I've gleaned what I think you're saying, but I'm not 100% sure. But thank you so much for all you're doing. It's amazing.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for having me again,
Yes.
man.
Yeah, it was super great to have you and to get to meet you kind of on the other side of this virtual platform.
It's working now. I can see everyone.
Oh,
Now
yay,
I'm
great.
on. Oh, that's
Yeah.
good. People are moving. It's good. Yeah,
Yes.
thanks. Do you know what I was going to say about 10 minutes ago before I lost connection for the last 10 minutes was that it's amazing to see, like, you know, certain parties of WPG just sort of veer off a little bit. Obviously, you've got your whiskey channel, which is amazing. And like Joe Porter's got his like YouTube channel as well, which he's found a niche as well. So it's great to see that those sort of like divergence happening and being really successful. So if anyone's got like a real passion about something, then don't hesitate to even just follow it, because sometimes it can be like literally gold, you know? So
Yeah,
for sure.
and also, I don't think of it this way, but the amount of skills I've learned on the whiskey side of things from, let's say, marketing or like videos and just a lot of different things, using equipment, those are invaluable skills that translate directly to the music side of things. So they're
sure.
like, it's not just totally siloed away from it. And it
Mhm.
is a passion of mine. It has become something that is like financially viable to a point that I never thought it would be, which is great. And it feels a little Charles Ivesian to have like a side thing, you know, but also have your music thing. It's kind of funny in that regard, but at the end of the day, it's all in the same kind of creative vein, I think. So I do
For
encourage
sure.
people to find things like this if they have that knack for another hobby. And because I'm like, you never know what you're going to learn from it. You never know how it could end up being something that is a side hustle or a main hustle. And it's also nice to not have to scrape by all the time uh, on a you know, a musician's salary.
Like having a professorship, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Like it's a different way of doing it, but if it's effective, then
Yeah,
why not? And if you can fill a niche and your
yeah,
passion, then you've got the viable option there. So for sure.
yeah. I think some folks also refer to they think of plan A, plan B, and they're like, well, I don't want to do my plan B because I'll never do my plan A. And they're not wrong, but everybody's different, you know?
Mhm.
And and for me, like in this case, whiskey wasn't a plan B. It was not a plan at all. It just happened. And then you're like, well, I'll just roll with it. So I think there's something to be said about going all in on a career, but then there's also something to be said about being a little bit more varied. And I feel like I've seen both sides of that, and it's been interesting, if nothing
For
else.
sure. And for me, it's sort of the journey of WPG. I would have never thought 10 years ago I would be doing this,
Yeah.
but it's just sort of happened and I really enjoy it. So if you enjoy something, then you can put a little bit of extra energy into it and,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, man.
so.
Well, cool. Tim, thank you for
Yeah.
having me again.
Now, you're more than welcome. Like, honestly, it's been great. Like, from what I've seen, but I know it's been great. I don't need to watch it. I know it's been great. So thank you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Tim, and thank you so much, Cameron, and everyone that participated today. Are we good to close out the live on this one?
I think we get to close out the
Yeah.
live. Yeah, go on, Megan,
check
close it out.
I'll close it out.
Bring us
Close
home.
it out.
Come back the same time next week for our next WPG Academy session with Gregor Shwelinsky. Did I get it?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, awesome. Yes, so check back this time next week. Thank you, guys.